Hello. Today I want to take you through one of my favorite SaaS products. It's called Airtable, and it gives you the flexibility and the power of a database, which functions similar to a spreadsheet. Now, this database allows you to create web applications. It lets you add content to a web application. It lets you use it for projects, to manage content, and so on. Um, there's a lot that you can do with this, and today I'll even show you a similar example how I utilize Airtable for one of my applications that I built. Now, this is what Airtable looks like. You are able to create folders. Within these folders, you are able to add content. Within this content, you can include name, description, and so on. But what's really interesting is you can even have images. Now, you can connect Airtable to your web application. So I'll switch my screen over here for a second and I'll bring this here. Now, this is one of the applications that I built. And how Airtable works with this application is first you need to connect it through the backend, and the backend in this scenario happens to be right here. So what we did is we built the backend, and this is utilizing Netlify as a serverless function where it's speaking to Airtable, it's connecting to the base, it's using this as the API key, and it's using this as the table. So table says takeout. And if we go back here, this is what takeout is. Takeout has all the content for our web application, which is all these items. And if we go on our web application, when we go to that precise precise part of that application, this is what all the details is. This is what all of the items are. And we are rendering this straight from Airtable. And how it's being done is through the backend where we're making a call and we are getting this data. Now, the way this is set up through Netlify serverless functions. This means that our application, we can keep our backend and the front end all within one application. And we're making this call. Once we get to 200, then we are getting this data. And in this scenario, this is what our data happens to be: the name, the image, the price, description, category, and so on. Now, what's very interesting is that because this is set up with Netlify as a serverless functions, this means that if I make any changes to any of this, my web application will get the updated details in real time. So I made this change. What happens next is Netlify functions, they make the build and they make these changes on this web app. And if we go back to our application and if we hit refresh, even though this is a deployed version, we're not running this on localhost, we should see okay, so we want to make this update right in the name. So we'll make it updated. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll hit refresh. And it should be somewhere right here. So here we go. So I made this change on my Airtable. I made it some adjustment, and right away we can see the update on our web application. And this is very useful because all of this was done without me going into the code base and physically typing anything about this code, physically making the change. And what's very, very interesting about this is this architect allows stakeholders, it allows business owners or various teams interact with a web application, and they can add content into it, they can make changes to it without needing to go into the back end and interacting with the code. So it's very interesting. Gives your projects, your applications a great flexibility because they're a lot more scalable now. Now, another thing that's very useful about Airtable is that you can optimize your applications even further. So you can connect with external APIs. For example, this one happens to be another service called Cloudinary. And what Cloudinary does is it optimizes your images. So it optimizes your images, they load a lot quicker, and it gives them all the power, the performance to make sure your application uh, is up to date when it comes to load time. Now, in this scenario, what we can do is we can take these images. So what we'll do is we are right here. So once we need to add an image, what we can do is there's multiple ways we can do it. We can upload it directly from our local source file from our computer, or we can even link it by giving it the the URL where this image is hosted on Cloudinary. Now you might be wondering, why is this useful? The reason why this is useful is because if we are fetching this image from Cloudinary, now we are getting benefits of improved load time for our application. And this is really useful because if we run an audit on our web application, so we're going to go back. So we're going to go back. What we'll do is we are going to run a quick lighthouse inspection on this, and we'll see how our web application performs. We can see how our load time is with images, and just get some data. So while this is being done, I just want to go back to Airtable. I want to let you know there's multiple tables you can create. So in this scenario, it happens to be a takeout page, but I also have another one where I have customers listed. So this is the data about all of the customers that have reviewed this restaurant, what they have mentioned, their image, their small icon, and how many stars they gave this restaurant. So same thing, once we go back to the application, we create a request to get these reviews. So we are making an Express, we are using Express for the routing. We're using Express as the routing. We're making a call to this uh, to this to this table of customers, which happens to be right here, and we're getting this data. So once we get this data, we are then able to fetch it. We're able to display it on our front end. And the way it works is none of the data is hard coded. We are simply just getting the information in terms of we're simply getting this information in terms of our customers, or it could be their menu items, where let's in this scenario happens to be the menu items, the takeout menu, and we're getting the data about the name, description, price, image. And why this is useful is because none of the data is hard coded. So none of the information about my menu, the description, the items was hard coded. I'm simply just making a fetch request, and I'm getting the data from my backend, and my backend is simply getting this data from Airtable, which happens to be right here. Now, going back to the point of why this is useful for applications is because it helps you in terms of performance as well. So right now our performance is a little bit low. It's not the best. It certainly can be optimized further, and the reason why is there might be several reasons. But this architect really helps our application because we can utilize external APIs like Cloudinary, for example, and we can use this, we can link this up with Airtable, and then we can link up Airtable with our application. Um, it's kind of a decoupled approach, and it's very similar to what Launch Darkly does, where your production and your deployment is your deployment and your features are, they could be in a decoupled approach. um, Airtable gives you the same flexibility where your applications can be built using a decoupled approach, as we just see. So, very interesting. A lot of things you can do with this. You can create different tables. You can add different context into it. And just going back to my point, you can also, this can also give businesses the flexibility of making any changes to their web application without physically needing to go and um, and uh, and making changes on the code. Once you have the backend, once you have the architect set, once you have the code set up, then your application is, it's very simple to make changes to, uh, because you the way your application is set is nothing is being hard coded. You're simply just making API requests to get the data and displaying it. So that's about it for Airtable. It is a wonderful tool. It is pretty. They are pretty generous when it comes to pricing, and you can learn more about it at airtable.com. Thank you so much.